Do it. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight for this session. Well, tonight it's a beautiful sun, 6 p.m. in the UK. You could be elsewhere in the world, so good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. Thank you very much for joining us today. We have Stefan Bossuwe, who is joining us to talk about holistic business analysis, which is a very intriguing way to see at the business analysis, as to see at the whole, not at the parts of it. I will try to be brief to talk about Stefan's history and experience, because he got quite a lot to talk about, and it's a very strong experience to inspire all of us. Stefan is one of the founders of the Brussels chapter, together with other fellow enthusiasts. He was the president of the chapter for 10 years, and he's still the chapter ambassador. In 2012, he was the first CBAP in Belgium and Luxembourg. He's got over 3 decades of professional experience in many roles, different business domains, and he also has the experience of working in coaching and introducing and deploying new methodologies and best practices. He is a prolific public speaker, and he has been very active in conferences and other professional events. Something I found very interesting is that he was one of the first content providers for IIBA Knowledge Hub, and the originator of the Babok Studio Group approach that we all have heard about. So in case I haven't introduced myself, I'm Adriana Silva. I'm on behalf of IIBA UK. I have the utmost happiness of welcoming Stefan tonight and everyone who joined us. And I'm the community director with the London and South East. And what we do is this: we are the voluntary arm of IIBA, and we are here to support the community so you can have these dialogues, learn and grow together. And without further delay, over to you, Stefan.
Hello, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, good night, wherever you are. And thanks for the introduction, Adriana. I'm honored to be here and to present you about holistic business analysis. And without further delay, I'll start sharing my slides. If you have a question, put it in the chat or the Q&A zone. I think it's a Q&A zone. So if it's very urgent, then Adriana can interrupt me because you can't speak. You're on mute, all the participants. And then we can continue from that on, because I don't see the Q&A zone while I'm presenting. I should be focused on my presentation, of course. Okay, so start sharing. And these are my slides, and I go into presentation of this. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to talk about holistic business analysis. So first, a little introduction. But before you want to talk about something, you have to give some definitions and concepts. But we're also going into practice. Trust me, the definition and concepts always use examples so that it's not too boring. Because I can imagine that definition concept for people think, ooh. Well, conclusion and some Q&A, but also if a question is very urgent during the session, we have 1 hour or a bit less now. Don't worry, you can ask the question, and then we'll see, and at the end we'll interrupt me, and we'll see if it's interesting to interrupt at that moment. Okay, good. There you go. Well, this is what you've already heard from Adriana. More than 20 different industries. And the most important thing about this slide is not the photograph, but that I'm passionate about business analysis. And I spent much of my time promoting the business analysis mindset, like I'm doing today. About this session, this is what you saw when you registered, so I don't have to repeat it. But it's intended for almost anyone. Business analysts, experienced starters, people, organizations interested in business analysis, and decision makers that want to improve their business. I even gave it to project managers and they understood, so I guess you'll be okay. Okay, definitions and concepts. First of all, the International IBA everyone should know it. I would hope so. They had a core purpose until 2022. Now it's the goals, objectives, or mission and vision and whatever. But until 2022, if you looked about IBA, they presented their core purpose as to unite a community of professionals to create better business outcomes. And that made me wonder, because what is business analysis? Business analysis, we have many definitions. I will show you on later on. But I see that instead of having fancy definitions, why don't we look at the outcome or the output of business analysis? Why do we do business? The why. I would say the goal of business analysis is to facilitate and or co-create better business outcomes. It's very wide, it's very broad, but in fact, our role is very wide, very broad. So I think this would be better to describe what business analysis is about than a fancy definition that you can find in the BABOK or in the BA standard. But we will get to that anyway. So first of all, going to present a few important knowledge bases, like first of all, the BABOK. It's the only one, the only global recognized standard for the practice of business analysis. Essential, collective knowledge. You know how many people have contributed to that. And consensus-based is always a public review. It's a bit outdated. It's more than 10 years old. It just had its 10th anniversary, which is kind of old. So IBA said, like, let's do a BA standard because we believe in a BA standard. And the first one was in November 22, and the second one in January 25 this year, of course. And it's a foundation. So IBA sees the BA standard as a foundation of professional business analysis, gives a summary of concepts, and it's just like with the BABOK, co-created and reviewed with IBA's global business analyst community. And why do I present those two and not only the most recent one? We'll get to that later on. So definition of business analysis, which is in both the BA standard as in the BABOK. Very fancy, you get those slides. It's enabling change, organization defining needs, recommending solutions, delivering value to stakeholders. Yeah, you got a second one, a second version, which is the other way, opposite around, another vantage point of the same stuff. But one thing I would like to say, solutions don't deliver value. We BAs don't deliver value, because if business decides not to use your solution, no value will be created. We only deliver value proposition or value potential. It's up to the business to use your value proposition to enable to create value. Okay. It can be performed on different levels: strategic, tactical, operational. We will touch a few of them along this presentation. And my most recent presentation, which I'm not going to give today, is to use holistic business analysis at a strategic level. And it can be performed within the boundaries of projects or throughout enterprise evolution and continuous improvement. I know BAs who do nothing else than doing business process analysis without any solutions. And sometimes those those process analysis result in spin-off solution projects sometimes. But that's not the core job of those people. Then the definition of holism. Holism, it comes from the Greek word holos, which means all, whole, entire. And in fact, it's a concept of systems that should be viewed as wholes and not just as a collection of its parts. So, to give an example, if you look, I hope quite a few people here own a car or have a car, a leased car, whatever. If you talk about your car, you're not talking about your steering wheel, the fuel tank, the engine, or the battery, and the wheels. No, you talk about your car, or you look at your car. That's my car. But at the same time, you're very well aware there's a steering wheel because you use it continuously. There's a fuel tank or a battery. Yeah, of course, if you don't refill or recharge, you won't drive for a long time. Huh? There's an engine and so on and so on. So we do know the whole, the car, and all the parts. We are aware of them. So we know very well what holism means. But do we use it in our work as a BA? For example, we should look at an organization as a whole and not only as a collection of employees, business domains, customers, processes, systems, change initiatives, and so on. It's both. It's the whole and the parts. In fact, holistic thinking is continuously doing what is the impact of what I'm doing now on the whole organizations and on the other parts. That is really holistic mindset. And for me, to be honest, I can't think about business analysis without holistic mindset. In fact, I shouldn't be giving this presentation, but I am. But it's to show you that you can't think about BA without thinking about holism. That's what I believe, what I truly believe. Okay, the first time that if you open the Babok and you look up in the PDF version, holism or holistic, the first time you will find it in the BACCM, the Business Analysis Core Concept Model. It exists with 6 core concepts. It's a conceptual framework for the business analyst profession. Each core concept is an idea fundamental to the practice of business analysis, but each core concept is defined by the other 5 core concepts. You don't only see 6 core concepts, you see also 15 relationships. So you might have a very good idea about the needs, but if you haven't had a good view on changes, contexts, or value, for example, your view on needs is limited. You have to have an idea, not all the details, on all 6 of them. Okay, and they are equal importance. Stakeholders won't like it, but they're equal important as needs, changes, context, value, and solutions. And they're relevant at different levels, from enterprise strategy to tactical implementation. But okay, that sounds quite theoretically. Let's go for an example. Oh no, first of all, let's start a poll. And I'm going to ask the question, and then Adriana hopefully will manage to erase the poll. So we have seen those 6 core concepts. Which of those 6, and you can select more than one, do you have experience with? Okay, I repeat, how many of those 6 you have experience with? Thanks for starting the poll. So we'll give half a minute. I think 30 seconds should be sufficient. Do you have worked on change with stakeholders, needs, value, solution, context? Okay. How many have already replied, Adriana? I think you can see that.
Well, no, 92%, 95%.
Okay. Are the others
86% of the participants have, to be fair.
Sorry? How many?
Can I end the poll?
Yeah, go.
Okay.
So show the results. You can show the results, share the results. So, this is a good one. I really love that one because most of the time, stakeholders, needs, and solution, those are very well a lot of people work. But if I ask value, it's already a little bit less because most of people think about customer value, but also the value of the other stakeholders are relevant. If the back office employee doesn't get any decent value, I'm sorry, they might move away, and then you don't have any back-end officers, people to serve the customer. Customer will be unhappy either. Change, also something we don't see very often, but it's good. And context, well, it's it's only 58%, which is quite common. Context is something that people don't always take into account. But anyway, thanks for sharing. Let's continue. Let's go for a little example. And I might step on a few toes, but this is the result of a workshop I've done in 2018 in London at the BA conference. So let's talk about UK economy. An economy, well, those stakeholders, consumers, merchants, manufacturers, and a government. What kind of needs do they have? Easy access to good price quality, good income. But same with the merchants and manufacturers. Same for a government, but they also want to have good trade deals, control of them, control of legislation, and implicit, they also have needs to respect international agreements like the Good Friday Agreement. I don't have to tell you what kind of context we're going to talk about. A few years ago, UK was inside the EU, and in fact, things were going reasonably well, except for the control over the trade deals and legislation. The government thought like, hey, trade deals and legislation, we have to agree with 27 other countries. We don't like that. Okay. So there was a transition period where for the consumers, merchant, manufacturers, and most of the government things were going still reasonably well. Although the control of the trade deals, the UK was already in during transition period, couldn't participate anymore in negotiations on trade deals. And legislation, that was a blur. The transition period was a bit blurry. What was the control over legislation? But then we had the Brexit, and in fact, things were not going that well. I won't say today it's a little bit better, but the first few years after Brexit, things weren't going that well. And then you say, like, what happened with those two? Because nothing changed a lot. Well, control over trade deals. If you are a bloc with 500 million people, or you are a bloc with only 50 million people, your leverage is much smaller. So if you want to do, for example, a trade deal with a country like China with billions of people, or India, well, billion of people, and you say, like, what have you to offer? And you negotiate with an EU with 500 million people, there's some leverage. If you negotiate with an UK with 50 million people, okay. So, in fact, what they tried to resolve, they didn't, the politicians. This is what the result was out at the end of the workshop in 2018, before, and we didn't have anything like transition or whatever. They only spoke about a soft and a hard Brexit, what we assumed would be a soft and a hard Brexit. But at the end, that was, the soft Brexit was a transition period, and the hard Brexit was the real Brexit. And it was amazing that we, with a bunch of BAs, during a workshop, could already forecast what really would actually happen. Okay, I hope I didn't step on too many toes. I know it's sensitive, but it's such a good example why context is important and relevant. I can't give any better example. Okay, requirements. The BA standard has requirements, different classes of requirements, but also the BABEL. I'm going, first of all, requirements. A requirement is a usable representation of a need. In fact, it's a translation of a need into something tangible with whom you can maybe develop a solution or whatever. That's a requirement. You can also see they focus on understanding what kind of value could be delivered when fulfilled. When fulfilled, as I said, it's also the business have to use something. Okay, we're going to the next poll. 1 second, Adriana. First, I'm going to ask the question. Okay, the BA standard describes a number of requirement categories, of which some having subcategories. In fact, They are the same as in the bubble. But which one of the following is not in that list? Which one is not a requirement according to a classification, according to the BABOK or the BA standard? Business requirements, stakeholder requirements, user requirements, or transition requirements. You can only select one. So which one is not in that list of requirement categories? Go ahead. 30 seconds. What do you think? Business requirements are not a real category? Or maybe stakeholder requirements? Maybe it's user requirements or transition requirements. Well, so Adriana, maybe you can follow the percentages of people that participated. And once
65%.
Come on, don't be shy. It's anonymous, huh?
Well, we are 78% and nearly 40 seconds. Should we end the poll?
Yeah. Well, if you're too shy, sorry. But not sharing it.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
I hope I took it.
Okay. Well, you can share it. Share. Go ahead, share it.
Okay. Sorry, my fingers were quicker than the mind and the ears.
So everyone believes that business requirements. So yeah, okay, and stakeholder requirements, but the most of them think user requirements is not part of the BA standard. And then second comes transition requirements. Okay, you can close. We can remember that once we get to the end of this little chapter. So luckily, no one thought that business requirements is not part of the BABOK. Okay? In fact, business requirements, they explain why you want to do a change initiative. And that can be to the whole organization or a business area, like, for example, HR or finance, or a specific initiative like GDPR. Huh? The keyword here is why. Okay, let's go for an example. I told you I'm going to make food examples. So a food retailer wants to create new business. So why there's a change initiative? Wants to create new business focused at people with food constraints. And that can be medical, like allergies, or religious, or lifestyle. Religious, like halal or kosher, or personal conviction, vegetarian, vegan, without being part of your religion. Okay. Why? Then the next one is stakeholder requirements. Quite a few of you thought that stakeholder requirements were not into BABOK or in the BA standard. I'm sorry, it is. In fact, it's a translation of the business requirements into the for the different stakeholders. It's the what. What do the stakeholders need? Another thing which is very important, business requirements, they should not contradict. If you find contradicting business requirements, run away. Try to solve it. You shouldn't have that. And it's most of the time not developed by VAs, most of the time by a sponsor or a program or a project manager at the upper level. You only have 2, 3, or 4 maybe. You don't have that many whys you want to do a change initiatives. If you have too many, there's a problem. Okay, but stakeholder requirements, they can contradict because not all the stakeholders have the same interest and the same vision. And then it's up to the business analyst to find a compromise that satisfies the different stakeholders that cause the conflicts within stakeholder requirements. That is a very important part of what we do. It's the stakeholder requirements, not the solution requirements. You can do that. A system or a functional analyst can do that. But business analyst, this is the most important category that we can work on. Let's continue with our example. I've got a few food intolerances, but not allergies, but I would like to find effortlessly recipes that take those allergies into account so that I can enjoy preparation of a meal instead of focusing on my restrictions. So quite often I have some intolerances, some are more inconvenient than others. I go and shop ingredients for my meal. I always have to look, okay, what's in there, the allergens and so on and so on. But imagine that I could go straight away to my recipe and that the recipe takes into account my intolerances or allergies. Yeah, my food constraints. What? And you can see a kind of user story. Well, I call that stakeholder story, because this is currently not a user, it's a stakeholder. Solution requirements, these are what most of us are very familiar with, because you can have functional and non-functional requirements. User stories, it's a different representation of a solution requirement. It's the capabilities and quality of a solution, right? And it needs to be a good level of detail to allow development of a solution. Doesn't need to be IT. A solution can also be something on paper, changing procedures or whatever. And the keyword is how. So how we're going to assure that what the stakeholders need can be implemented. The how. Okay, let's have a website where the consumer can create an account with to predefine a food profile, even with some weights. For example, I've got some dairy intolerance, but once in a while I can have it. But I have a very severe peanut allergy. So no peanut. So 100% no. Then find the recipes, map the recipes with our products. Don't forget, we wanted to make extra business, make a shopping list. And with that shopping list, order online or go to the store and with the map say like, here's the sugar and here. So that was interesting. Website should be secure and responsive. Yep, fine, that's a non-functional. And then at the end, we have transition requirements, who are always temporary. Many of you know and can be at different levels, at stakeholder level, at solution level, but also at technical level, a database migration. It's a technical transition requirement. And well, yeah, you can have data conversion, training, business continuity, but beware, training can be also a solution requirement. For example, if you worked on PeopleSoft and you went to Salesforce and you go to Microsoft Dynamics, for example, if you have a training that says like, well, before in Salesforce, we did scenario A this way. Now in Microsoft Dynamics, we do scenario A this way. That kind of training is a transition requirement. But if new people arrive who have never worked on Salesforce and will immediately work with Microsoft Dynamics, and you provide a trainings like, hey, scenarios A, you do it this way on Microsoft Dynamics. You don't have to mention it because there's only one solution. There's no an old one. That is a solution requirement. It helps you with the current solution. So even the context is important. The context of the training says it's a solution or a transition requirement. The keyword is, of course, change. And set up a marketing campaign, for example, to promote a new website that will be available on smartphone, tablet, and computer. Next, sustainability requirements. And you'll see that here we spoke about the BA standard, which means V1 and V2. But this one is no longer available in the V2 over the BA standard, and it's not part of the BABOK. It's a sustainability requirements. And why do I mention it? Because I'm not presenting the BABOK, I'm presenting holistic business hours. And I thought sustainability requirements are very important to be there. We live in a world where sustainability should be mandatory. And in fact, it's a translation of the sustainability strategy in something tangible, like other requirements. And here I have two keywords, inclusion and well-being. Well-being not only of people, but also of the planet or animals. And inclusion is because everyone thinks sustainability has to do with the planetary boundaries. No, sustainability, according to United Nations, is also the inclusion, that you don't discriminate, that it's also good that everyone gets education and so on and so on. So it's more than only the planet, it's the social, economical boundaries too. An example, as a leading food retailer wanting to contribute to a sustainable future, we want to minimize as much as possible our ecological footprint of the whole organization, including our products, and make sure our products are created and distributed in social and ethical conditions. That's the description almost of sustainability, but this is it. Okay, but let's make that tangible. So what's the relationship with the sustainability requirements and the other ones? First of all, let's see, I told you not too many business requirements. You have the stakeholder requirements that are linked to business requirements, and that can be end to end. So one stakeholder requirement can be linked to different business requirements and vice versa. Okay. And then you have the solution requirements. Also, one solution requirements can be linked to different stakeholder requirements and vice versa. Yeah. We have the transition requirements. You can have transition requirements at the level of stakeholder requirements, solution requirements, and also technical requirements, but those are outside the boundary of our story of today. And then we would have sustainability requirements, and they can be linked to the different requirement categories, even the transition requirements. Okay, interesting, but can you give an example on that? Of course I can. A sustainability requirements, that's the one I gave earlier. Go back to the story we had. As a leading food retailer, we want to contribute to a sustainable future. We want to inspire our customers to purchase more sustainable products. That's a business requirement, because this doesn't give a change initiatives, but this does. Why? We want to contribute to a sustainable future. We want to inspire our customers to purchase more sustainable products. Okay. Stakeholder requirements. I'm all for sustainability. I want to purchase products with a minimal ecological footprint and produced in good social and ethical conditions for the people involved, even if I would pay a little bit more. Okay, so solution requirements. Well, let's design a sustainability score that have both environmental and ecological and social and ethical dimensions of our products. Of course, we can't do that on our own. It has to be in collaboration with partners and supply chain. Show alternative products with a sustainability product. So if I, for example, need sugar for my recipe, it will show a few brands of sugar and also give a sustainability score. And I say I like sort on sustainability score, and then the most sustainable will be on top, for example. I can also go to the cheapest one. It's a choice, but this choice will be offered. And these are the indirect relationships, of course.
Stefan, we have one question.
Yes.
How are transition requirements different than change management? How are transition requirements different than change management?
That's a good question. Can we hold that question? Because I would like to reply that later on. So,
okay.
Transition requirements versus change management. Very good question.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll see when I'll answer that the best. First, I would like to finalize that story. This is the relationship you find in the Bible. Before you want to do anything, you have to know why you want to do something, why there's a change initiative. In fact, this is the drawing in the BA standard. In the PABOK, you won't see those keywords. In the BA standard, the version 2, you see those keywords, and I can share that those keywords were mine, and I BA copied them. That's fine. I don't have a problem because it makes more sense with thinking about keywords. So first, why you want to do a change initiative? What do the stakeholders need? How are we going to ensure that the stakeholders receive what they need? And then how we're going to go from one situation to another one. And once we are in the new one, then you have to look like, okay, we're now operational. How are we doing what we expected? Waited half a year, a few months. Okay, you might go back to business requirements and so on. It's a cycle. It's a virtuous cycle. Maybe we think a vicious cycle, but I think a virtuous cycle. Okay, and if you add the dimension of sustainability, we see that it's all related. So holistic, if you think only the boundaries of your organization, well, if you add the boundaries of the planetary and everyone living on it, that's holism in steroids. Okay. So which one? User requirements. And luckily, I think the biggest group of people thought user requirements were not in the PABOK. Luckily, user requirements are specific type of solution requirements and not a specific type of stakeholder requirements. Users are stakeholders. That's true. But it's always in relation to a solution. So that first you have a solution before you can talk about users. My honest opinion or humble opinion. Okay, let's go to practice because we are not in urgent need of time, but we're getting there, but let's carry on. So many of you might have already been involved in a customer journey, a customer experience exercise. And it's if I would be selling books, the most important stakeholders that I would think about is, of course, the customer. And what can a customer do? Can look at the books that I'm selling, make a purchase, confirm, and receive the book. For example, if it's online, it happens in those 4 stages. Okay, this is a customer journey, which is kind of, okay, trivial, but a customer journey on its own is not much. It's very often trivial, but it's the customer experience. So if you increase the experience for a customer, you might think might be attract them to come back or stay with you. That's the whole idea. The customer journey without customer experience exercise doesn't make that much sense. Okay, but now if you zoom out and you still have that customer, and I just started my company and I browse books. Oh, I need books. You can't browse books if you don't have any books, or at least a catalog. So I need someone to make books. I choose that I'm not going to make books myself. I'm going for a book publisher where I can order books and that will deliver books. So once I have books, this customer can look at books and says like, ooh, I like these 2 ones. Okay, these 2 books, £80. Okay, nice card. Ooh, platinum, very nice. But that still doesn't say anything about if the purchase can be made with that card. I need someone to tell me. Very often you use a credit card issue for that. Like, hey, is that okay? 80 quid for those 2 books? Yeah, fine. Happy flow. Okay. Purchase is okay. And there are your books. Okay, interesting. But this book publisher regularly sends me a list of new book titles. Maybe we can use that. Maybe we can do something with that. Let's do a monthly mailing. Why not? Interesting. So a customer journey or customer experience exercise, it's an excellent starting point, but of course, it doesn't stop there. You have to take a step back to have the big picture, holistically. This is called a business context model. And it tells the business scope. Remember, we chose ourselves not to make our own books. We looked for a book publisher. But to tell me whether this credit card or debit card is valuable for the 80 quid, I need someone else. Was by choice, but this was not by choice. You can't do that yourself. Trust me, I worked for those 20 plus industries, also in that kind of industry, payment industry. So trust me, you don't want to do it yourself unless you're a bank or something else. Otherwise, use your partners. So it gives the scope of your work. Right? So the work is what you do yourself, and the neighboring systems, like those are the adjacent, and it tells you how you interact with those neighboring systems. Here you have a control, but you don't have control what happens on the other side. You should be able to control a bit the interaction with the external stakeholders. Now, if we translate this into a matrix, all those arrows, you do see, for example, customer a business event and business service. A business event is something that happens outside with an impact inside, or an impact, something that happens inside with an impact outside. So for example, if this customer wants to make a purchase, the event happens here. But if we want to do a monthly mailing, the event starts here. Okay? And a business service is how we respond to such an event. And here you see the flows. For example, a customer wants to make a purchase, it interacted a few errors. Purchase request, credit authorization, purchase confirmed. So it had a few errors. Interesting. Most of the time you do both together. Let's dig into helicopter, dig into a bit more detail, and let's take the business service, process orders and deliver books. So once the orders are ready, you want to deliver them. There's a process behind it. Okay, how does that business process look like? First of all, which books are ready to ship? Look up where they are in the warehouse, pick them up, put them in a package, add a label to the package, deliver the package to the customer, and label the order as delivered. Otherwise, next day you would deliver the same books to the same customer. That's something you don't want to do. So this doesn't talk any bit about a solution. Is it with a computer? Is it with a robot or whatever? No, it doesn't. This is a business process at the what thing. This is the minimal thing we need to do, not the how. But we might think about, and this is called a business use case. But we might think about the business service. The business service, delivering, that's a business use case. But you might want to think, we want to go to a solution. Let's put rectangles around things that we want to automate or maybe semi-automate. For example, pick up books and put them in a package. We're just starting, we're not going to do robots. And deliver package to customers. Nope, no, like Amazon with those, what are they called again? Drones. Amazon delivering with drones. No. But these are the things we might want to automate or semi-automate. Okay, that's the solution scope. And those are also called product use cases. So if you know Suzanne and James Robertson's and they mastering the requirements process, they talk about business processes, a business use case, which is the service, and those circles are the product use cases. And they scope the solution. So this is the purest form of how to scope a solution. Now, if your process is a bit more complex and you have to make a drawing, you can still run circles around parts that you want to automate or semi-automate, which is still a solution scope. We didn't describe the solution, but we described what the solution should deliver, a product use case or solution use case. So once we have a group of activities in your process that you would like to automate or semi-automate, after that you can do requirements. And we'll get back to the first part of our presentation. Interesting. Okay, overview. First, we did the business context and the business events and services. Then we looked at the business services that have a process behind it, because a book catalog on its own, it's not always a process, but very often. For each of the business services having processes, we do processes, and then we say what we're going to scope for the solution, and then we have the requirements. But wait a second, didn't we have requirement categories? Yes, we did. Let's take that again. So here, okay, let's look at stakeholder requirements and solution requirements. Okay, why do we want to do that? Okay, I'll show you. So take one of these. Okay. If we would go straight from a lookup location of these books in warehouse, we could. You need a search functionality, find a book, on its location in the warehouse by ISBN number or combination of title and author, and the resulting spot in the warehouse is represented with coordinates like row and shelf and so on, or a visual map representation. That's fine. But imagine that we would first go to the stakeholder requirement. As a warehouse manager, I need to know the location of the books in our warehouse so that I can retrieve them for shipping orders. And then go to the solution requirements. How big is the chance that you won't cover all of the solution requirements if you go directly, or you go through an intermediate step as stakeholder requirements? Chances, you still might miss a few, but the chances are smaller. So by using also the stakeholder requirements, there's a bigger chance that you won't miss on solution requirements, or much less. Oh, remember this one? Yeah? Okay, stakeholder requirements are always linked to business requirements, not always linked to solution scope. Business services, yes, but not always. But okay, interesting. It's another dimension. Interesting. Okay, so that was this was the detailed one. Let's go a bit to the simpler one because I want to show things. But know in the back head of your head, this is the one it looks like. Okay. Traceability and impact analysis. So if this is a traceability, all those relationships, if you would change something here, the impact might be very big because it would impact maybe a large project process and then all the requirements behind it. But for example, if you would change a button here, the impact will be minimal. So it helps you to have traceability, but also help you to have impact analysis if you want to change something. So have a look at this. Look at it, because my next question will be, how many different scopes will you see in this drawing? 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, pop up the poll. So we're not going to give 30 seconds, huh? 20 seconds.
20 seconds, okay.
20 seconds. How many have already replied?
Well, 20 seconds, 42%, 44.
Let's go for another 10 seconds, just for the sake of it. And then we close. Yeah, okay.
Okay, so that's 60%.
Yep, you can show the results.
Okay.
So most of the people think 3. Interesting. Okay, that's fine. You can close. Let's go. So, first of all, and we mentioned quite a few already, the business scope. Remember, the business context model, that was describing the business scope. The solution scope is already there. Huh? It was there, huh? Just repeat it. But then, is there another sort of scope? Yes, there is. There is the project or product scope. No, depends what you look at it. So due to time, budget, you might decide not to deliver everything. If you would deliver the whole solution scope, you would have a full solution. But sometimes you go through phases, having a minimal viable product and so on and so on. But having this overview will help you. If, for example, in this situation, you would do only requirements 1 and 2, and not 3 and 4, you know that your process is still not fully automated or semi-automated. You know you still have to do something around this part of the process. Sometimes you might decide, I want to do process per process. I think that might be a better, but it helps you to choose priorities, prioritization, or phasing of your project. Okay? 3 was the correct answer. So most of you had it. It was 3. There you go. And remember the customer journey, customer experience. That's only that small part of the whole story. So if a lot of people would only focus on this without understanding the rest, you might propose stuff that is not valid or not even possible. So it's very important that you know at least a bit the whole story. And that's again, I'll go back to the holism aspect. The whole story, but also the details. You have to know a bit more about this business, the customer journey, but you also have to know about the different requirements, the processes, and so on. So the whole and the details. Okay, conclusion. And I'll get to the question later on. The BACCM, the requirement categories, and the overview. So before we conclude this is what I see as a holistic business analyst. Those are the takeaways. Inspiration, reference material, of course, the bubble guide, the BA standard, which is only the version 2 that you can download, the version 1 no longer, the mastering the requirements process of Suzanne James Robinson, and there's some contact information. Okay. But first of all, I'm going to talk about transition requirements and change management. I thought that was a very good question, and let's go to the to this transition. So the keyword is already change, that's for sure. And the focus, but even at the BACCM, I would have expected the question to be asked here. Because here it's even more urgent. Here you have to think about change. How do I make sure that the stakeholders remain to be on board while going through the change, involve them in the early stage, and all those rules of change management. And in fact, the requirement categories is only a reflection of this. So transition requirements, they do describe the change. But in this part, on those transition requirements, so for example, making sure that all the stakeholders remain involved would be a transition requirement. You probably would like to put your change management policy in transition requirements. I think that would be a great idea. So thanks for the question, because it might make me reconsider a few things. Okay. Is that okay for a reply?
No? Well, Erin Twiz was the one who sent us a message. If you have further questions, let us know. Please. And I'm just curious. You were saying that the holistic business analysis is a mindset.
Yeah.
So what suggestions would you give to the business analysis practitioner to embed this mindset in the teams and organizations they work? If they are always split in silos, for example, there are teams that they only care about the solution, they are unable to see other requirements, communicate or interacting, or how they are linked together. Yeah. What practical advice would you have for us in this context?
Well, first of all, let them invite me to have this talk. That's the first step. But for private companies, I do charge. Not for you guys. Secondly, we do have a lot of companies there. Or you try to create change within an organization, or you suffer the limitations of silo thinking, or you move away. It can be first try and say, like, this is not moving, and then you move away. But the thing is, as a BA, each time you want to do something, you have to ask yourself, what's the impact of what I'm doing now on the whole organization and on the other parts of the organization? If you can't reply to that question, you might ask yourself, am I happy here? because they prevent me to reply to to those questions. What's the impact of the organization and impact on the other parts of the organization? So I can't give a solution to that. I can only give this presentation, or you can send the link of that presentation to the people in your organization. But it's so important, it's so relevant to have a holistic mindset and to be able to do that with an organization. I think most of the people here in the presentation, the webinar, probably will agree by now. If they're not, like, ooh.
And we received a couple of questions. Let's try to get one at least, Stefan. In real world cases, what are the most challenges faced when trying to apply holistic or holism?
Well, first of all, the challenges with yourself. How holistic mindset do you have? Yeah? And it requires you a bit of discipline. Each time you do something impactful, you have to ask yourself, what's the impact on the whole organization and the other parts? And sometimes it's very trivial, there's no impact. If you change a button on a screen, yeah, it might involve the processes that are linked to it, or maybe the stakeholder requirements, but the impact will be minimal. But it's important to ask yourself that question, because everything is connected. Does anyone remember the film Avatar of James Cameron? It says we're all connected. It's the same like in Pocahontas, because Avatar is the Pocahontas version in science fiction. But we're all connected, and that's the basics of holistic mindset.
And we have well, let's try our last question. You mentioned acting at strategic, tactical, and operational. I know the horizons from the agile extension. Is there other source that we can use that don't relate directly to agile?
Well, to be honest, if you look at agile as a development methodology, if you look at it that way, then you could, for example, do this exercise without agile, but once you're at the stakeholder requirements, scrum along. I think it would be interesting to, I believe in a hybrid environment where you first look up to the processes, maybe stakeholder requirements, or phased that you first do process one stakeholder requirements and then do some scrumming. So, for example, you have the safe method, the feature. So imagine those are features. You have to have the feature for somewhere, and with holistic business analysis, you're going up to the business context to find those features. But you can say that this is a feature in an agile context, a product use case, that this is a feature, or you can level the features at this level. Because remember, a feature should always return value. And remember stakeholder requirements for those who know SAFE. Stakeholder requirements. In a stakeholder requirement, if you use a stakeholder story, you tell what the value is, the rationale of your activity. Yeah, next.
Okay. Well, are you up for a last question we received? So what would you suggest are the first steps someone could take to start doing more holistic business analysis in their day-to-day work?
Well, I think I have to repeat what I said earlier.
Yeah.
Do something. Ask yourself what's the impact on the whole organization and the other parts of the organization. Try to find that, discover that as soon as possible. That's basically the most important part of holistic mindset. What's the impact, even today in your day-to-day life? What's the impact of what I do today to to my family, to the organization, to the planet, which comes back to the sustainability requirements.
Oh, I think with that we end exactly at 7 p.m. We thank you very much, everyone who has been with us tonight and collaborated with your questions. We thank Stefan very much for taking the time preparing this very insightful presentation for us that will keep us ruminating, reflecting on this for the days to come, Stefan. So thank you very much, and I wish everybody a very good evening, and we see you in the next event.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay. Do you close the webinar now?